As if deporting good, hardworking immigrants wasn't enough. Revoking temporary protective status for 500,000 Venezuelans wasn't enough.
This is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea.
Maybe R.F. Kennedy Jr. can fix that.
But there's...
Hosts of The View are absolutely livid, again. This time, their outrage is directed at Donald Trump and his latest move on tariffs. You'd think by now they'd have found a new angle, but no. Once again, they're using any excuse to twist the narrative into yet another attack on America itself. That's their specialty after all. Manufacturing outrage while slandering the very country that allows them to sit on national television and spew their nonsense unchecked. This latest meltdown was especially revealing, though, because in their blind rage against Trump, they ended up exposing their own hypocrisy. One by one, they vented their frustrations, spinning the issue into some grand catastrophe, as if tariffs are the ultimate evil. But the irony? While passionately trying to drag Trump through the mud, The View's own Sunny Hostin accidentally stumbled into endorsing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's right. While attacking Trump, she inadvertently backed one of his biggest challengers. And what did the audience do? Booed her. That's the same audience that cheers on every anti-Trump jab, the same crowd that claps on cue like trained seals whenever Joy Behar or Whoopi Goldberg bashes conservatives. But the second one of their own veers even slightly off script, even by accident, they turn on them instantly. It's a perfect example of how rigid and mindless their ideological echo chamber has become. No room for independent thought, no space for even a moment of deviation from the narrative, and then there's Ana Navarro. Somehow, she managed to take Trump's tariff policy personally. She was furious that Trump dared to threaten Mexico with economic pressure, as if holding our neighboring country accountable is some kind of unforgivable crime. But she didn't stop there. She took it to the next level of absurdity, complaining about how tariffs might raise the price of her tequila. Yes, you heard that right. While millions of Americans struggle with inflation, crime, and a broken immigration system, she's over here treating the potential rise in tequila prices like a national crisis. It's the kind of melodramatic, self-absorbed take that only The View could produce. But believe it or not, this was only the beginning. Their entire segment spiraled into one of the most revealing, self-defeating discussions they've had in a long time. And trust me, you don't want to miss how bad it...
In the international organizations, these are the people who send soldiers to go to war with us when we are fighting, in the Middle East, when we're fighting any sort of war. Canada sends its soldiers. These are the people that have been by us time and time again, that send their pilots and their planes to help us put out our fires, literally and figuratively. These are our friends, and we are treating them like trash. We are bullying them. And it's as if, I look at this thing in Mexico and I'm thinking, okay, as if deporting good, hardworking immigrants wasn't enough. As if emboldening the racial profiling and bigotry against Latinos wasn't enough. As if revoking temporary protective status for 500,000 Venezuelans wasn't enough. As if bullying Panama wasn't enough. Now he's going to tax our tequila and avocados?
Yeah.
Let's cut through the noise for a second and get to the real issue. Why is the left so obsessed with letting Canada and Mexico take advantage of the United States? Just because we've historically been allies doesn't mean we should sit back and allow these countries to exploit us economically and politically. Look at the facts. The migrant crisis is spiraling out of control, with Mexico acting as a highway for illegal immigration straight into the United States. Cartels are openly trafficking fentanyl across the border, fueling an epidemic that is destroying American communities. Yet, despite all this, year after year, we continue running a massive trade deficit, over $100 billion, with these same countries. And somehow, according to the left, we're the bad guys for daring to suggest that maybe, just maybe, if we're enriching our neighbors, they should step up and secure their borders so our citizens stop dying from cartel-driven crime and drug overdoses. It's the same tired democratic hypocrisy we've seen for decades. They love to sound compassionate, but their actions tell a completely different story. Look no further than their stance on illegal immigration. They claim to be the party of kindness and morality, yet they actively support policies that encourage migrants to work in inhumane conditions for poverty wages. Remember when a certain prominent Democrat justified illegal immigration by asking, "But who will pick our vegetables?" That wasn't just a tone-deaf remark, It was a stunningly honest admission of how they view illegal migrants, as a permanent underclass, cheap labor to be exploited, and here's the kicker, this isn't even a new phenomenon. If you take a step back and really analyze their rhetoric, you'll notice something chilling. It sounds almost identical to the arguments Democrats used in the 1850s to justify slavery. Think about it. They're pushing for vulnerable, trafficked migrants to cross the border under dangerous conditions, only to be exploited for grueling labor, working long hours for almost no money, with no legal protections, all to provide cheap labor that benefits the elites. And yet, they have the audacity to call themselves the party of compassion and justice. It's the same story every time. The Democrats claim moral superiority while enacting policies that are actually more harmful, more oppressive, and yes, more racist than the problems they claim to be solving. And if you think that's bad, just wait, because The View had plenty more to say, and trust me, it only gets worse from here. Stay tuned, because their latest meltdown is one for the history books.
So now if there are these tariffs, that's going to cause problems, billions of dollars of problems. And if the tariffs, if they are in turn return the tariffs, let's say it's you have a coffee store, and you're going to sell a cup of coffee, and your coffee is $5. We know how expensive coffee is, right? Yeah. You sell coffee for $5. Now the coffee beans coming in from Mexico are now $5 more. You think if I own that shop, I'm going to eat that $5? No, your cup of coffee just costs $10. Well, and that's the deal.
Hostin just proved once again that having a college degree doesn't necessarily mean you understand basic economics, or reality for that matter. And honestly, at this point, she during a recent segment of The View, Sunny, who, let's not forget, is a college-educated lawyer, delivered one of the most embarrassingly ignorant takes I've ever heard. She actually claimed that if a $5 cup of coffee were hit with a 25% tariff, the price would instantly jump to $10. Yes, you heard that right. Somehow, in her mind, a 25% increase magically turns into a 100% price hike. Let that sink in. This is what happens when people are handed degrees without actually understanding the subjects they studied. Colleges today seem more interested in mass-producing intellectuals with a superiority complex than actually teaching them how to think critically. It's like participation trophies for adults. Just show up, collect your diploma, and boom, you're suddenly smarter than the rest of us. Or at least, that's what they believe. Every time I hear the left brag about how Kamala Harris won the educated vote, I can't help but think of Sunny Hostin. It doesn't sound quite as impressive when you reframe it as, Kamala Harris won the Sunny Hostin IQ vote. People often ask me, why do you even watch The View? And here's the answer, because they present themselves as a credible news talk show. This is what the other side is hearing. This is where they're getting their information. If we don't understand what's being fed to millions of people every single day, how can we fight back against the misinformation? The Art of War Lesson 1. Know your enemy. If The View was just a lighthearted brunchtime gossip show where a bunch of celebrities sipped mimosas and talked about pop culture, I wouldn't waste a second on it. But that's not what's happening here. These hosts sit down with real politicians. They pretend to have serious discussions on policy. And because of that, millions of people watching at home actually believe this is a credible source of information. They get radicalized by the propaganda these women push, and they don't even realize it. That's why it matters. That's why we have to pay attention. Because people are drinking the Kool-Aid that The View is serving, and it's turning them into something dangerous to democracy. And now, as if things weren't already ridiculous enough, here comes Whoopi Goldberg, our resident philosopher of nonsense, dropping some ancient wisdom about why, actually, we are the bad guys for simply expecting our neighboring countries.
And Canadian citizens showed how they felt about these tariffs at NBA and NHL games over the weekend. Take a look. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Never.
I'm sorry. And I have to say, even the conservative media is warning about the price Americans are going to pay for this. So, I mean, everybody's saying this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea.
This right here is the entire problem with the virtue signaling left. They are obsessed with making sure everyone likes us. They need the world to think we're kind, compassionate, morally superior. Even if that means getting completely walked all over in the process. I swear, I don't think even a high schooler cares this much about what random people think of them, so according to Whoopi Goldberg, we shouldn't ask Canada and Mexico to increase their border security. We shouldn't expect fair trade policies. We shouldn't push for anything that makes the relationship even slightly more balanced. Why? Because that might hurt someone's feelings, and if that means Canadians start booing our national anthem at sports events, well, I guess we're just supposed to sit back and take it. Oh no. How will we ever recover? But here's the thing. Let's talk about those sports leagues for a second. The NHL and the NBA are majority American leagues. If Canada is so offended by us simply asking for fair deals, why don't they just leave? Why don't they start their own hockey league? Their own basketball league? I mean, those are their sports, right? Oh wait. That's right. They like the money, they like the benefits that come from being closely tied to America. They love the financial perks. They love the market access. But the second we ask for even a little fairness, suddenly, we're the villains. It was only cool when we were the ones getting screwed over, and honestly, if that's how they really feel about us, then they were never our friends to begin with. Think about it like this. If I had a friend who only stuck around because I paid for his food, his rides, his fun, and then the moment I asked him to chip in just a little, he suddenly turned on me and made me the bad guy, yeah, I'd drop that freeloader so fast, and now, here comes Alyssa, weighing in on Trump's decision to cut foreign aid. Normally, she's one of the more rational voices on the panel. But in this particular moment, she is dead wrong. Watch.
And what makes America the most powerful nation on earth is that we have friends and allies. And it's because we engage in international trade, we don't bully our friends, we show up and give international aid. And if we stop doing that, which is what I feel like Trump is leaning into, I'm not saying that that's fully what he's doing yet, we're ceding our role of global superpower to China because they will step in, they will show up, and they will be friends to the people that we're giving not a nice signal to in Canada and elsewhere.
This is the moment where the view reaches peak absurdity. Whoopi Goldberg, our resident expert in nonsense, decides to explain why other countries don't want our food. Her reasoning? America's exports are supposedly rejected because they're packed with crazy pesticides. And just when you think it can't get any more ridiculous, Sunny Hostin takes it to another level. Completely by accident, in an attempt to pile onto the anti-American rhetoric, Sunny inadvertently endorses Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a man the media has spent months trying to brand as a dangerous lunatic. The best part? The audience, so conditioned to boo anything that deviates from the usual script, turns on her instantly. It's a moment of pure confusion. Watch the panic set in as she realizes what she's done.
So, to point out that there is a reason people don't really take a lot of our things that we export, because the quality of what we put out has not always been the best. When we look at what's in our foods, other countries won't accept food from us if it's chock full of the stuff that
preservatives and shelf
we allow to go through. So you can talk about making American and building American, but that also requires that we make big changes as to how we do things.
Maybe R.F. Kennedy Jr. can fix that.
But
That, my friends, is what you call a Freudian slip. Sunny Hostin just accidentally admitted that RFK Jr. has a point. Our food is riddled with garbage, and no one wants to buy it. And what did the audience do? They booed her. Because they've been so brainwashed into believing that RFK Jr. is the enemy that even when someone on their own team agrees with him, they freak out. You could see the panic on Sunny's face the moment she realized what she had just said. For a brief second, she had broken the golden rule of daytime television. Never say anything that could be even remotely interpreted as a compliment to RFK or a criticism of the establishment and the rest of the panel. Pure comedic gold. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Joy Behar looked like she had just swallowed a lemon, and Ana Navarro started frantically scanning the teleprompter, desperately hoping for a scripted escape. Spoiler alert, there wasn't one. The funniest part? The audience. Their initial reaction was hesitation. You could tell their brains short-circuited for a second. Wait. Do we agree with that? But instead of thinking too hard, they defaulted to their usual setting. Mindless outrage. Sunny tried to backpedal immediately, but it was too late. The internet had already caught it, and now the clip is out there for everyone to see. It's a perfect illustration of how The View isn't about real discussion. It's about sticking to a script. The second you deviate, the machine breaks down. That's why they panic when a guest with an opposing viewpoint challenges them. They aren't trained to debate, they're trained to gang up, shout down, and congratulate themselves on winning an argument that never actually happened, and that's why RFK Jr. terrifies them. Not because he's an extremist, but because he refuses to stick to their script. Sunny, for just one moment, forgot hers. Partner.
Trump got rolled by both of these countries, and no one, least of all Trump, seems to have realized it. Both the leaders of Mexico and Canada have agreed to do what they have already been doing. It's just that Trump didn't seem to know about it.
Both Mexico and Canada have reached agreements today with Donald Trump to do what we want them to do, which is to put people and technology and resources at the border to stop the flow of people and drugs, illegal immigration, stem the tide. That is the whole point of this exercise, and that is apparently what is happening. And yes, there have been some troops there in Mexico. This is an agreement to do permanent deployment. And yes, some of this stuff in Canada was already announced, but now they were dragging their feet. Now their feet are held to the fire. They've got 30 days to really implement, and they can't pussyfoot around anymore. So the point of this exercise today, to me, had less to do with trade and more to do with saying to our neighbors, you need to be better neighbors.
Now let's talk about the meltdown happening across the media landscape over Trump's recent victories. Over on CNN, you've got Scott Jennings having to educate an entire panel on why Trump's tariff threats actually worked. The media is in full-blown denial mode, insisting that Trump didn't really accomplish anything because Mexico and Canada had already promised to take action. But let's be real, promises mean nothing when there's no follow-through. It's like your mom asking you to clean your room, and you keep saying, yeah, I will, but hours later, nothing has changed. Then dad comes home, leather belt in hand, and suddenly that room gets cleaned in record time. That is what Trump did. He didn't just ask nicely, he put the pressure on, and suddenly, Canada and Mexico were scrambling to get their act together. But the media refuses to acknowledge it because admitting Trump was right is simply not an option for they want us to believe in this fantasy world where international negotiations happen through polite requests and handshakes. Meanwhile, in the real world, Canada and Mexico were dragging their feet until Trump forced them to act. Now, all of a sudden, they're spending billions, increasing border security, and setting up joint task forces with the US to address fentanyl trafficking. Funny how that works, huh? It just goes to show, once again, that the liberal media doesn't live in reality. They live in a delusional utopia where diplomacy means saying, pretty please, and expecting results. But as Trump has proven time and time again, sometimes the only way to get things done is by holding people accountable. And the fact that this approach actually worked? Well, that's just something the left will never admit. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. More insanity from the media is coming up next, so stay tuned.